In lesson 3B, we're going to model producers. And in this problem, we have two producers, Osgood French Fry Company and Miracle Potato. They have several production lines in their factories. Osgood has 4 production lines. Miracle Potato has 2 production lines. When inventory levels are high, they shut down. When inventory is medium, they have 1 production line going. When inventory levels are low, they have 2 production lines going. For Osgood, high inventory levels, they have 1 production line going. Medium high inventory levels, they got 2 going. Medium low, they got 3 production lines going. And then low inventory levels, they got 4 going because demand is so high. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this information to Excel. Okay, I copied the information to Excel. Now, when you copy it to Excel, make sure you right click and then you match destination formatting. Okay. Remember that? You want to match destination formatting. That way you don't bring in all the HTML junk from the website. If the price per bag of French fries is currently $2.79, we need to figure out which firm is the marginal firm. Now, the marginal firm is the firm that is indifferent between producing or not producing, right? That happens at a certain price. At some point, the firm becomes indifferent between producing a good and not producing any of it, right? That's the marginal firm. Now, it looks to me that it's obvious that Osgood French Fry Company is not the marginal firm. It's the low-cost producer. Now, how do I know that? Well, one, it's got 4 production lines. But at an even lower price, it will have 1 production line going and be producing on average in a given hour 1 bag of French fries. Now, why is that? Well, maybe production line 1 for it has, the most senior people on it, and they want to keep these people happy. They don't want to lose them just in case. They got to ramp up production. They need their experienced people, right? Experienced people are the most valuable people. So maybe they want to keep them around. So they work them. And when inventory is high, maybe they have these people not on the production line, but maybe they have them in the plant doing other things. And they just keep production going with this 1 production line. And they'll let quantity drop to 1 bag of French fries per hour. So maybe what they do, if you can imagine this, is they run this production line for a couple hours during the day. So on average, they're only averaging 1 bag of French fries for that given day, right? Per hour. And the rest of the time, maybe they're training, maybe they're helping out with maintenance, maybe they're instead of laying them off, they could say, hey, instead of going home and not getting a paycheck, we're going to keep you on if you improve the plant. So maybe they're painting or something to that effect, right? So they want to keep their most senior employees happy, and they keep them employed. Now, Miracle Potato, on the other hand, when the price is $2.79, they just shut down everything and people go home, right? They have 0 production lines, 0 quantity. So they just shut down, right? So at $2.79, Osgood French Fry Company is obviously not the marginal firm, right? Because they'll operate at even lower prices. So what we have to do here is we have to assume that Miracle Potato, when the price gets to $2.79, they're indifferent. And what they do is they just shut everything down. Miracle Potato. We need to aggregate the information from these 2 tables into one. And this table here, this one uncompleted table here, is what we call the market supply schedule. And we're going to use it to graph the market supply curve. We want to put copy price to B1 and copy quantity to A1. And then the prices to B2 to B4. Okay, now to get the quantity supplied in the market, we have to ask some questions. How much is going to be supplied by both firms when the price is $2.79? All right, so I'm going to type equal in A2, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to find $2.79, At 279, Osgood is going to supply 113. At 279, Miracle Potato is going to supply 0. So the total quantity supplied is 113. Now, at a price of 329, what's the market quantity? At 329, Osgood supplies 225 bags of French fries. At this price of 329, Miracle Potato supplies 102. And then finally, at the price of 379, Osgood supplies 337. Miracle Potato, at this price of 379, supplies 204. So let's type these values over here, 327 and 541. I'm going to insert a couple of columns here. I want to insert a scatter plot here using these values on the x-axis and using these values on the y-axis, because the supply curve is mapped out with quantity along the x and price along the y-axis, right? And in Excel, when you highlight a column of numbers with more than 3 or more rows, Excel knows these are x values, and it knows these 3 values are y values. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on Insert, Scatter. And it looks like, to me, that the points look like they fall on a line, right? The best way to find out if they do is to right-click on the blue dot and then click on Add Trend Line, and then scroll to the bottom down here, click on Display Equation on Chart, and that right there is my supply curve. Over here with Format Trend Line, click on the bars, change this to number, and change that to 4, because we need 4 decimal place accuracy. Now I can close that out. That right there is my intercept. I'm going to copy it. You had to press Control-C on a PC, maybe Command-C or Control-C on a Mac. I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, now notice I have this number close to 0 times x. X, if you remember, is quantity. So this number we're multiplying by what x is, quantity. So this right here is my slope, right? So I'm taking the slope times q, and then I'm adding it to this intercept. Let's press enter. Okay, the next thing I need to do is I want to use this equation here to calculate the price elasticity of supply. We used this equation before to calculate the price elasticity of demand on the demand curve that corresponds to a point on that demand curve. So it involves taking 1 divided by the slope. In my case, it's 0.0023. So I have 1 divided by 0.023. Close parenthesis. Now I'm going to multiply that by the price quantity ratio, and I'll put this in parentheses. And then I want to reduce the number of decimal places to 2. And then I can actually drag this down to get the rest of it. Again, I have 1 divided by the slope times the price divided by the quantity, and it gives me 437. Again, I have 1 divided by the slope of the supply curve times the price quantity ratio. Notice the price elasticity of supply. They're all very large numbers. They're all bigger than 1. When elasticity is greater than 1, we say here supply is very elastic. And supply is most elastic at the low price. At the low price, if we ask the question, what happens if price goes up by 1% from 2.79? Now, a 1% increase in the price when it's 279, that's going to be about a 3-cent increase. So price goes up by 3 cents or 1%. quantity supply is going to go up by 10.73%. So people are firms are very sensitive to small changes in price. So when the price goes up by a very small percentage, you have this massive increase in the quantity that is supplied. Now that percentage increase in quantity supplied for a fixed 1% change in price, which we call elasticity, declines. And it's declining as we get further and further up the supply curve. When the price is $3.79, firms are less sensitive to a price change. A 1% increase in price here from $3.79 only leads to a 3% increase in quantity. Now, eventually the price will get so high that the elasticity will be between 0 and 1. When that happens, firms are very insensitive to an increase in price. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this equation here that we've estimated. I'm going to copy everything from equal to the right, and I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to click that right there. I have the slope times my quantity, which is going to be in cell A6, plus my intercept, right? That's the equation I copied from the graph. And I need to calculate the firm surplus that corresponds to the first bag of French fries, the 20th bag of French fries, and the 30th bag of French fries that are produced, right? So I need this to be 1, this to be 20, and this to be 30, right? And then all I got to do is drag this down. And notice when the quantity supplied is 1, the minimum price a firm will accept to produce that bag is $2.53, which is the value of the intercept rounded to 2 decimal places, right? Now, at the 20th bag, the firm is willing to sell that bag for as low as $2.57. And then at quantity of 30, that firm needs at least $2.60 to produce 30, right? Now, does that make sense? Well, it kind of does. I mean, if you think about a winery, when you go on wine tours in Northern California, wines have a superabundance in a vintage that is ready for distribution and sale, right? They have this vintage ready, right? This red wine or this white wine, whatever it is, right? Pinot Noir, Merlot, whatever it is. They have this wine that they just produced. It's in all these bottles. It's being ready to ship. They have the boxes of bottles are still in the warehouse and they're getting ready to ship. So they have this superabundance in these bottles of wine and they want to promote them. So they invite people to the winery. And when people come to the winery, they get free tasting. So when you have a superabundance of the product that you sell, you're willing to part with the very first units at either no price or very low prices. And you see this in Costco too. When you walk around Costco, these firms are giving away free samples of their food. Why? Because they have this superabundance of food. And the very first ones that are sold, they're willing to part with them at a 0 price. Now, if the market price is $2.79, what is the firm surplus? The firm surplus is the difference between the price that they get to sell it for minus what they would be willing to part with it for, right? And the firm wins in this case. They win, right? So they're willing to sell this first box for $2.53. They get to sell it for $2.79, and their surplus is 26 cents. All right, what about the 20th bag of French fries? Well, when you plug that into the supply curve, you get a minimum price that the firm is willing to accept to make and sell those bags of French fries. $2.57 is the minimum they're willing to accept for that 20th bag of French fries. Now, the market price is still $2.79. The firm still wins in this transaction. You don't feel as good as you did here because here, for that very first bag of French fries, you're willing to accept $2.53. For the 20th bag, you're willing to accept 257. So you still feel good about the transaction, but just not as good as that very first transaction, right? Which is probably why people hang or tape their first dollar they earn to the wall of their business. That first transaction is highly valued. Now, what about the 30th bag? Again, we're going to plug the 30 into our supply curve, right? We're going to multiply the 30 by our slope, and then we're going to add to that the intercept. And so now firms are willing to produce and part with 30 bags of French fries if the price is 260 or higher. And their surplus is the difference between the market price and what they're willing to part with the product at, right? So now their firm surplus is 20 cents. They're still getting 279 a bag. And they feel great about that because they would have sold it for as low as 260. The marginal consumer is willing to pay at most the market price. So the marginal consumer has zero surplus. That's the last unit sold. The price is made at the margin. The next consumer is not going to make a purchase because the market price is too high for them. The price is made at the margin. So at the margin, the firm surplus is zero. And for that to happen with a market price of 279, the firm must be willing to sell that last item only if the price is equal to 279. So at this last unit, the firm is willing to sell the product at the market price or higher, right? And the market price is 279. So their surplus is zero at that point. Now at this price, 279, remember Miracle Potato is indifferent between producing and not producing. So only Osgood French Fry Company is in the market. Now, when the price goes up a little bit, Miracle Potato is going to jump in. When the price gets to 329, they're going to start production line 1, and all of a sudden they're going to be going from 0 bags of French fries produced to 102 bags of French fries produced per hour, right? Okay, so at this price of 279, at this dot, the quantity supplied is 113. And the price is 279. If I draw a line in here, that's the supply curve. And this is the market price. Then firm surplus is this white triangle here. The height of the curve on the supply curve is the intercept. And the height of this triangle is the market price minus the value of the intercept. So total surplus at 279 is the height of the triangle I just spoke about, right? This is the market price, and this is the intercept of our supply curve, right? Remember that? That's our intercept of our supply curve. So when quantity is 0, the product of these two is 0. We add 0 to that, we get 2.526. So the height of the triangle is that. 113 is the width of the triangle, right? Remember, at this point here, the quantity supplied is 113, right? So this 113 is the width of this triangle. So we take the height of the triangle, multiply by the width of the triangle. That would give us an area of a rectangle. Divided by 2 gives us the area of this triangle. So all we have to do is to calculate the firm surplus at this market price of 279 is to copy that and then paste it into here. And we get a firm surplus of 14.916. Another way to calculate that firm surplus, remember, is to do this. Is to not only calculate the minimum price firms are willing to accept at a quantity of 1, 20, and 30, but do that at every quantity from 1 to 113, from 1 to 113. And you have all these heights right here, right? You have basically 113 heights. And you add those 113 heights together, and you're going to get something that's really close to area of the triangle. Now, before we move on, I've modified the Excel spreadsheet here. I've moved this total surplus calculation down. I've added these yada, yada, yadas, right? So we got quantity from 1 to 20, then 30, and then yada, yada, yada out to 113, right? So this is the quantity associated with the marginal exchange. The marginal exchange is between the marginal firm and the marginal consumer. The consumer surplus for the marginal consumer is 0. At the marginal exchange, firm surplus is 0 because at this 113th unit, the firm is willing to accept at minimum 279, and the market price is 279. Suppose the market price is no longer 279, it's now 379. Instead of the marginal exchange being 113, the marginal exchange is now 541. So I'm going to change this to 541. Okay. And then what I have to do is I have to change this blue box to this red box, and we get something really close to 0. Now we have a round off error here, right? We have a round off error here, which gives us something other than 0. Change these individual firm surpluses as well. 379. Okay, so that first quantity, the firm is still willing to accept 253. Still willing to accept 253 for that first bag of French fries. The thing that's changed, though, is the price. Before, they were only getting 279. Now they're getting 379. When you're getting 379 instead of 279, the firm surplus for that very first bag of French fries is a lot larger, right? Now it's $1.26. So we're basically just adding $1 onto that firm surplus, onto that firm surplus, and onto that firm surplus, right? We're adding $1 on it because we're not getting 279, we're getting 379, right? So now we'd be willing to part with that one bag at 253, but we get paid 379. So the difference is 126. For 20 bags, we'd be willing to part with them for 257, but we get to sell them for 379. So the difference is 122. For the 30th bag, we'd be willing to part with it for 260, but we're getting 379. And that difference is $1.20. Now, the 541st, again, we have a round off error here, right? When you're dealing with equations, you have the round off error. The 541st customer is the marginal customer. Since the lowest price a firm is willing to sell to the marginal customer equals 79, remember the firm surplus is going to be 0 because the seller, consumer, they're indifferent between making the exchange. So it's going to be 0, even though I have it at 0.02. That firm surplus is going to be 0. So the market price is 379, surplus are both 0. Now we got to calculate the firm surplus. So if we go back to our graph here, the new market price is 379, and the quantity supplied is 541. So the firm surplus is this triangle, this bigger triangle. And the height of the triangle is the market price minus the intercept. Well, that is this value here, right? This is the intercept, and that's the new market price. The width of this triangle is the quantity 541. And if I just do this part, if I just multiply those two, I get an area of a rectangle. I want the area of a triangle, so I got to divide it by 2. So this gives me the new total firm surplus. And it's going to be bigger than what it was before. To 2 decimal places, the new firm surplus, total firm surplus, is 341.91. At each price quantity pair, we want to compute firm revenue, right? And that's pretty easy to do. Revenue, and we can multiply the price times the quantity to do decimal places. So at a price of 279, the revenue is 315.27. At a price of 329, the revenue is 1,075.83. And at a price of 379, the revenue is $2,050.39.